The trading station known as Vora 9 floated silently above a ring of blue rocks and drifting space dust, a place where thousands of species passed through but humans were still rare enough to be noticed. Rian Hale, a young human technician, walked through the metal corridors every morning with a simple goal: fix what was broken, keep his head down, and avoid getting involved in trouble that didn't belong to him. He liked the quiet parts of life and preferred machines over crowds. But life had a habit of placing unexpected moments in front of him, moments that changed everything even when he wasn't looking for change at all. That morning, while Rian carried a tool case toward Dock Sector 3, he heard murmurs from passing travelers. There was talk of a wealthy merchant arriving again, someone known for showing off exotic companions. Rian didn't care for such things. Many alien cultures kept decorative partners or service attendants, and although not all of it was harmful, it always made him uncomfortable to see someone treated like a symbol instead of a person. Still, he kept walking until he glanced toward the open market space, and his steps slowed by themselves. A soft metallic leash glimmered under the bright station lights. Attached to it was a young alien woman with pale silver skin and long, flowing hair, like strands of polished metal. Her eyes were gentle but full of exhaustion, and she walked quietly behind her owner, never lifting her head unless commanded. The merchant beside her strutted proudly, showing her off as if she were a precious statue instead of a living being. Rian stopped without meaning to. Something about her gaze pulled him in. She didn't look mistreated physically, but she looked as if her spirit had been kept inside a cage for a long time. He found himself whispering, "She doesn't belong like that," before shaking his head and continuing toward his job. He had repairs waiting. He couldn't get involved with powerful merchants. He reminded himself of that again and again, but the image of the alien woman's tired eyes stayed in his mind like a shadow following his steps. Later that day, fate, or maybe simple timing, placed them in the same place again. Rian had been assigned to do a maintenance inspection inside the merchant's private dock. As he stepped inside, he noticed the dock was quiet and empty except for her. The merchant had gone elsewhere, leaving her seated at the edge of a platform like a silent decor piece. She kept her hands folded on her knees, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. She looked up only when Rian dropped a small scanner on the floor. The tool making a sharp clink, she flinched at the sound, and Rian immediately crouched to pick it up. As he lifted it, he noticed she was watching him with careful eyes, as if studying how he moved. He gave a small, harmless smile and held the scanner toward her. "Sorry. Just dropped it." She stared at the tool, unsure if she was allowed to take it even though he wasn't offering it as a command. Rian realized this and gently set the scanner on the platform beside her, instead of reaching too close. She blinked once and then gave a faint nod, more like a reflex than a choice. It was such a small action, but it told Rian everything. She was used to obeying, not choosing. For a few minutes, the dock was completely silent except for the soft hum of machines. Rian kept repairing a power node, but he felt her eyes on him now and then. She didn't speak. She seemed afraid to speak, but he could sense an unspoken message from her: curiosity mixed with fear, hope mixed with uncertainty. When he finished the inspection, he walked past her once more. She lifted her head slightly, enough for him to see the quiet sadness inside her. He wanted to say something kind, but the merchant returned at that moment with 3 loud clients, bragging about his perfectly trained Solari companion. The alien woman immediately lowered her head again, her expression going blank. Rian clenched his jaw, but he forced himself to leave. He was only a technician. He had no authority to interfere, but he couldn't ignore her presence. Over the next few days, he saw her again in different parts of the station. Always silent, always following the merchant. Rian noticed small details. How she was left standing in cold areas while the merchant talked. How she avoided eye contact with everyone. How she flinched at raised voices even when they weren't directed at her. She seemed fragile, not physically, but emotionally, as if she had been alone too long and had learned not to expect kindness. One afternoon, while Rian worked near the dock again, something unexpected happened. A sudden vibration shook the station slightly, caused by irregular docking thrusters. A container rolled loose and slid dangerously close to the platform where she stood. She slipped on the shaking floor, losing her balance. Before she fell, Rian reacted without thinking. He jumped forward and caught her by the arms, steadying her. For a split second, they were close enough for him to see her expression clearly. She looked startled not by the shaking but by the fact someone had touched her with gentleness. Her lips parted as if forming words she forgot how to use. Rian made sure she was steady before stepping back a little to give her space. "That was close. Are you okay?" he asked softly. She hesitated, her voice trembling from disuse, and whispered, "Thank you." The two simple words felt strange in her mouth, as if she hadn't spoken them in years. Rian realized she must not get many chances to speak at all. He wanted to say something comforting, but the merchant rushed in again. The alien woman instantly straightened her posture and lowered her head. Rian quietly moved away. That night, Rian couldn't rest. He kept thinking about her. He wondered what her species, the Solari, were like, what their culture valued, and whether she had any rights he could help her with. Something in her eyes when she whispered, "Thank you," haunted him. It wasn't the gratitude. It was the hidden plea behind it. The next morning, he researched everything he could find about Solari citizens. He discovered that many Solari who ended up as companions had been tricked into signing contracts they didn't fully understand. Legally, they were supposed to have translators and protection. If the contract violated even one part of the law, they were allowed to leave. Rian leaned back in his chair with a new thought forming in his mind. If her contract was illegal, she could be freed. But he knew the merchant was powerful and influential. A human technician investigating him would be seen as foolish and dangerous. Still, he remembered her falling, remembered her quiet whisper, remembered her eyes searching his face for something safe. He couldn't ignore that. The more he saw her, the more certain he became. Something wasn't right. Every time their paths crossed in the station corridors, she gave him a tiny glance, quick, shy, almost invisible. But those glances grew slightly longer each time, as if she gathered courage from seeing someone who wasn't part of her captivity. She began to resemble someone waking up slowly from a long, hopeless sleep. Rian noticed the difference. He noticed her shoulders losing a bit of their tension when she saw him. He noticed how she stood a little closer to him when passing by, as if craving the safety of his presence. One late afternoon, the merchant brought her through a crowded area while speaking loudly about a deal. She walked quietly as always, but when she passed Rian, her fingers twitched slightly, almost like reaching out for help without realizing it. Rian felt his heart tighten. He promised himself he would at least try. While returning to the workshop, an idea formed inside him. Maybe he could ask a station officer to help search for her contract. It was risky, but it was a start. And for the first time in a long while, Lyra, the name he would learn later, felt a tiny spark of hope inside her chest. She didn't know why she trusted the human, but she felt something she hadn't felt in years. The wish to be saved. She didn't know that Rian had already made a decision. He wasn't going to walk away from her fate. Rian spent the next 2 days thinking of ways to help the silver-skinned Solari woman he had encountered. Her quiet eyes and soft whisper of thanks replayed in his mind again and again, like a small voice asking him not to forget her. He tried to go about his regular repair jobs, but everywhere he walked, it felt like he would see her again, standing behind the merchant, walking slowly with the metallic leash, watching everything silently as if she lived inside an invisible cage. He finally decided he could not help her alone. So he visited a station officer named Mara Vent, someone with a reputation for fairness. She was a tall, reptilian alien who worked in station legal affairs and had a sharp dislike for corrupt merchants. When Rian explained what he had seen, she frowned, tapping her clawed fingers on the desk thoughtfully. "You say she barely speaks, avoids eye contact, and the merchant leaves her unattended for long stretches?" Mara asked. "Yes," Rian said. "She looks lost, like she doesn't even know she's allowed to be free." Mara sighed. "Solari are peaceful people. They're often taken advantage of because they don't fight back. But if her contract is illegal, she must be freed. I can pull the documentation. But quietly, the merchant has connections. Rian felt relief wash over him, but also fear. If the merchant discovered what they were doing, things could turn dangerous. Still, he nodded. I just want to know if she's being held wrongfully. Mara gave him a small smile. You care a lot for someone you barely know. I don't know why, Rian admitted, but I can't ignore her. That was enough for Mara. She promised to search the legal archive for the contract. It would take time, but she would notify him the moment she found anything. The next day, Rian went back to work. But he kept glancing around whenever he heard the crowd shift or voices rise. And finally, near the central hallway, he saw her again. The merchant walked ahead with 2 clients, talking loudly about trade routes and profits. She followed behind with slow, careful steps, head lowered, hands clasped in front of her. The sight made Rian pause. She had changed a little. He could sense something subtle in her movements, tiny hints of hesitance instead of numb obedience. She lifted her head for a moment and saw him standing a short distance away. Her silver eyes widened slightly, almost like someone who spots a small light in a dark room. Then, as if gathering courage from an invisible place inside her, she gave him a very small nod before lowering her head again. Rian felt something warm inside him. Even that small acknowledgement meant she remembered him. Later, when he passed near the market floor, he spotted the merchant arguing with a trader. The merchant's voice was harsh, impatient. The Solari woman stood behind him as always. But when she heard Rian's footsteps, she lifted her eyes again. She didn't smile. She didn't seem like someone who remembered how to smile, but her gaze softened. It was as if she felt safer when he was near, even if he could do nothing at that moment. Rian kept walking, but he made a silent promise that he would not fail her. That night, Mara sent him a quiet message. Found contract. Something is wrong. Meet me early. Rian barely slept. When dawn lights hummed to life in the station ceiling, he walked quickly to the legal office. Mara already had the file open on her screen. She pointed to the contract, her eyes narrowing. This document is heavily edited. The signature field is incomplete, and several clauses are missing. It looks like someone altered it to hide that she never agreed. So, can she be freed? Rian asked, his heart beating faster. Yes, Mara said. If she didn't sign this willingly or didn't understand it, then legally she cannot be held. The merchant violated the law. But we need proof that she wants out. Rian thought of her quiet nods, her empty eyes, her small voice. She does want out, he said. I know she does. She's just afraid. That fear is normal. Mara replied softly. Her people are very gentle. Years of being controlled can make someone forget how to make choices. But if you approach her carefully, she may speak. Rian nodded firmly. Tell me what I need to do. Before Mara could explain, an alarm suddenly echoed through the station. Rian and Mara exchanged startled looks. That's a departure alarm, Mara muttered. Someone is leaving early without schedule. Rian felt panic rise in his chest. The merchant. He's preparing to leave with her. They both bolted into the hallway. Rian didn't wait for lifts. He sprinted down the corridors, heart pounding, weaving through crowds as the departure alarm blared again. He could not let her disappear into space. If the merchant left now, she would be stuck under his control for who knew how long. She might never get another chance. He reached the docking area just in time to see the merchant hurriedly pulling her by the wrist toward his ship ramp. She struggled slightly at the speed he yanked her. But she didn't resist. She looked more afraid than usual, like she sensed something was happening that she couldn't understand. Lyra, Rian called. He didn't know her name yet, but he shouted anyway, and her head snapped toward him with pure shock. The merchant scowled. You again? Get out of my way. Rian pushed forward. Stop! You can't leave with her! His voice echoed across the metal floor, drawing the attention of bystanders. The merchant sneered. She is my companion. My property. You have no right to interfere. Mara arrived behind Rian, panting. Her contract is illegal. You cannot remove her from this station. The merchant's face twisted with rage. You think some human and a desk officer can tell me what to do? Move. He gestured sharply, and 2 small security bots rolled forward, their lights turning red. They blocked Rian and Mara, preparing to force them aside. Lyra froze between both sides, her body trembling. She stared at Rian as if torn between fear and a desperate wish to run to him. Her hands curled into fists, a gesture that seemed strange on someone who looked like she'd forgotten she had the right to act on her own. Rian didn't back down. She has a choice, and she doesn't want to go with you. The merchant laughed coldly. She does what she is told. She has no choices. Something inside Lyra cracked at those words. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she felt something rising. Memories of her own people, memories of freedom, memories of being treated with respect before everything was taken from her. And standing in front of her was someone who had spoken to her kindly, caught her when she fell, looked at her like a person. Before anyone understood what was happening, Lyra stepped forward. She moved between Rian and the bots, placing herself in front of him with a trembling but determined posture. Everyone gasped. Even the bots hesitated. Her voice was weak, but it carried across the dock like a spark in the dark. Please, don't hurt him. Rian stared in disbelief. She was shaking, but she didn't move away. She stood like a shield, something no one expected from her. The merchant roared. What do you think you're doing? Get back here. Lyra turned slightly, her silver eyes shining with fear and courage at the same time. For the first time since Rian saw her, she chose something on her own. I don't want to go, she whispered. Not with you. The station went silent. Rian's breath caught in his throat. Mara straightened with renewed authority. The bots paused, their programming confused, and the merchant's face twisted in outrage. Mara raised a hand. That's enough. She has spoken. Under law, she must remain until a full investigation is complete. The merchant tried to protest, but station guards arrived after hearing the alarm. They seized the merchant for violating departure protocol and escorted him away while he shouted threats and curses. Rian knelt beside Lyra gently. She looked shaken, uncertain, almost afraid of what she had just done. Her hands trembled as if she expected punishment. Rian spoke softly. You were brave. You chose for yourself. She looked at him with wide, frightened eyes. I don't know what will happen. You're safe now, he said. No one is taking you anywhere you don't want to go. For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to breathe. Her knees weakened, and Rian steadied her again, just like the day she slipped. Except this time, she leaned into his support with trust, rather than surprise. In those moments, something new began inside her, a small but strong belief that maybe, just maybe, she could be free. Lyra sat quietly on the soft bench inside the small holding room, her hands resting on her lap as if unsure where else to place them. The room was peaceful compared to the chaos of the docking area. A warm light glowed from the ceiling, and the air smelled faintly of fresh filters. But even with the calm surroundings, she felt her heart racing. Everything that had happened, her own voice speaking out, the merchant being taken away, Rian stepping between her and danger, it all felt like a storm moving through her quiet world. Rian sat on the opposite side of the room, giving her enough space so she wouldn't feel overwhelmed. But he kept his eyes on her, not in a way that trapped her, but in a way that told her he genuinely cared. He worried about her. He wanted to make sure she felt safe. Mara stood near the door, reviewing a digital pad filled with legal details, her tail flicking slowly in thought. Lyra looked at Rian every few seconds, as if checking that he was still there. Every time she confirmed he hadn't left, she relaxed a little more. She didn't understand why she trusted him so deeply already, but it felt natural. He hadn't forced her to do anything. He hadn't spoken loudly or looked at her like an object. When he touched her earlier to steady her trembling knees, he wasn't rough, he was gentle, patient, and careful. Mara lowered the tablet and sighed. The investigation will take a few hours. Until then, Lyra stays here. No one can claim her. Lyra flinched slightly at the word claim, and Mara softened her tone. I mean, you are protected, Mara corrected. No one can take you without your agreement. Lyra nodded slowly, still struggling to understand the concept of having a choice at all. She sat quietly, her fingers touching the soft blanket Mara had given her earlier. It was warm and comforting, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Rian leaned forward slightly. "Are you comfortable? Do you want water? Food? Anything?" Lyra hesitated before answering. She had been taught for years to stay silent unless spoken to. But Ryan was looking at her with gentle eyes, waiting patiently for her words. "Water, please," she whispered. Rian stood up immediately, filling a cup from the dispenser. He handed it to her without getting too close. Lyra accepted it carefully, taking a small sip. The cool water soothed her throat, which felt tight from speaking earlier. She looked at Ryan again, and something warm moved in her chest. "Thank you," she said softly. "You don't have to thank me every time," Rian said with a small smile. "You deserve kindness." Lyra lowered her gaze, almost overwhelmed. She wasn't used to hearing such words. She held the cup tightly, as if grounding herself. Mara stepped closer. "Lyra, can you tell us anything about how you ended up with the merchant?" "Only if you're comfortable." Lyra took a deep breath. Her voice trembled as she began. "My people. We were traveling between systems. Our ship was attacked. I don't know who the attackers were. When they left, our vessel was damaged. We drifted." Rian listened carefully, his heart tightening. "Another ship found us," Lyra continued. "The merchant. He said he wanted to help. He spoke softly at first. But after I boarded, he said I would stay with him. I did not understand the contract he gave me. I thought it was temporary shelter." Mara nodded slowly. "He took advantage of your situation." "That is illegal." Lyra's eyes filled with worry. "Will he return? Will he take me again?" "No," Rian said firmly. "He won't." She looked at him, as if measuring his certainty. Something inside her relaxed when she saw sincerity in his eyes. After some time passed, Mara received a message on her pad. She read it carefully before turning to Lyra and Rian. "The investigation is complete," Mara announced. "The merchant violated multiple laws. Lyra is now officially free." Lyra's breath caught in her throat. Free. The word felt unreal. She blinked slowly, trying to understand it. Free meant she had a life again. Free meant she wasn't owned. Free meant she could choose. But free also meant she had no home, no money, no direction, no idea where to go. Lyra's shoulders trembled slightly. What do I do now?" she asked quietly. Mara looked at her with compassion. "You can stay in a safe shelter on the station. Or you can request transport to any Solari colony. If we can locate your people." Lyra shook her head gently. "My people scattered after the attack. I do not know where they went." Rian watched her carefully, sensing her fear and uncertainty. He couldn't stand the thought of her wandering alone. Afraid. Unsure, so he spoke before he even thought about it. "Lyra, you can come with me, if you want. My living space is small, but I can help you until you decide what you want next." Lyra looked surprised. "Come with you?" Rian nodded. "You don't have to decide now. But you don't have to be alone. I want to help you." Lyra lowered her head, thinking deeply. Her hands trembled lightly around the water cup. She had been controlled for so long that choosing something felt like stepping into a new world. But when she looked up again, there was a quiet certainty in her eyes. "I want to stay with you," she whispered. "If you allow it." Rian felt something warm bloom in his chest. "Of course. Only if it's what you choose." Mara smiled. "Then it's settled. I'll finish the release paperwork. Lyra belongs to no one but herself now." Lyra repeated the words silently. Belongs to no one. The idea filled her with a strange mixture of fear and hope. But she kept her eyes on Rian, grounding herself in the one familiar presence she trusted. When the paperwork was done, Mara guided them to a private exit where fewer eyes would follow. The station lights dimmed as evening set in, creating a soft glow in the hallway. Lyra walked beside Rian, though she kept a small distance, unsure how close was allowed. Rian noticed and slowed his steps, so she wouldn't feel rushed. He stopped near a window overlooking the stars. "Before we go to my room, is there anything you want to see or do?" he asked gently. Lyra gazed at the stars for a long moment, her silver eyes reflecting their light. "I used to watch the stars with my mother," she said softly. "We believed each star held a memory of someone lost." Rian listened quietly. "After I was taken," Lyra continued, "I thought the stars had forgotten me. But they look brighter today." Rian smiled gently. "Maybe they were waiting for you to be free." Lyra turned to him, her expression soft. "Rian, why are you helping me so much?" He hesitated, unsure how to put his feelings into words. "Because no one should feel alone. And because when I look at you, I don't see someone weak. I see someone strong who survived more than most people could. You deserve someone on your side." Her eyes widened slightly, touched by the sincerity in his voice. She wanted to speak but couldn't find the right words, so she simply nodded. They continued walking toward Rian's living quarters. Lyra followed him closely, but her steps were slower, as if everything around her felt new. And it did. Every part of the station she passed through now felt different because she knew she wasn't owned anymore. When they reached his small quarters, Rian opened the door gently. The room was modest. A simple bed, a small table, some tools stored neatly, and a window showing the endless stars outside. Lyra stepped inside slowly, her eyes scanning everything with curiosity and hesitation. "You can sit anywhere," Rian said softly. "Everything here is safe." Lyra placed a hand on the table, surprised by the freedom she was given. She had never been told she could choose where to sit. She finally selected a spot near the window and sat quietly, looking outside. Rian prepared a small meal, simple station food, soft and easy to eat. He placed a plate in front of her. "Tell me if you don't like it," he said. "I'll find something else." Lyra stared at the food for several seconds. No one had ever asked her if she liked anything. She took a small bite, her eyes widening at the warm flavor. "It's good," she said softly. Rian smiled. "I'm glad." As they ate, Lyra slowly relaxed. Each small action, choosing where to sit, choosing what to eat, choosing to stay, helped her rediscover herself. She looked at Rian often, studying his expressions, trying to understand why he was different from everyone else she had met since her capture. After their meal, Lyra touched her chest gently. "Ryan, today, when I stood in front of the bots, I was afraid. But I didn't want them to hurt you." Rian looked at her with quiet respect. "You were brave. You protected me even when you were scared." Lyra lowered her eyes. "I didn't think I could be brave anymore." "You were," Rian said. "And you still are." Lyra felt her heart tighten with emotions she couldn't explain. She looked at the stars outside, then back at Rian, then down at her hands. "Ryan, thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me." Rian didn't move closer or touch her. He didn't want to overwhelm her, but his voice was warm. "I'm here for you, Lyra, as long as you want me to be." One. Rian. One. Lyra felt something she hadn't felt in years: safety. She breathed deeply, letting it fill her. In that peaceful moment, she knew her life had changed forever, and she wasn't afraid of the change anymore. Lyra woke gently to the soft glow of morning lights inside Rian's small living quarters. The room hummed with the quiet sounds of the station, waking up distant engines, soft announcements, and the faint vibration of machinery moving deep in the walls. She sat up slowly, her silver hair sliding over her shoulders like a soft curtain. For a moment she had forgotten where she was. For a moment she feared she might still be in the merchant's chambers. But then she looked around and remembered. The small window showing stars, the blanket Rian had offered her, the calm silence of a place where no one barked commands. She remembered that she was free, truly free. Rian was sitting at the small table, adjusting a device and sipping warm tea. When he noticed her waking, he didn't call her name or command her to rise. He simply smiled in a gentle, natural way that made her heart feel warm. "Good morning," he said softly. "Did you sleep well?" Lyra nodded slowly, still getting used to the idea that someone cared enough to ask. "Yes," It was peaceful. I'm glad, Rian replied. If anything feels uncomfortable, just tell me. We can change it. She looked at him for a moment, studying the calm way his voice filled the room. She still didn't fully understand him. He acted differently from anyone else she had met in years. He didn't rush her. He didn't push. And somehow, that made her feel safe enough to breathe freely. Rian prepared a simple breakfast, placing warm food on the table without expecting her to take it until she was ready. Lyra slowly sat down across from him. She lifted a small piece of fruit, tasted it, and her eyes brightened. It is sweet. Good, Rian said with a laugh. You should try all the station fruits one day. Some are sweeter. Lyra looked at the bowl as if it held a universe of possibilities. So many simple things felt new to her. Choosing food. Speaking without fear. Sitting where she wished. These were small freedoms, but they meant everything. After breakfast, Rian worked on a small device near the wall, a scanner with damaged wiring. Lyra watched quietly, fascinated by the precise way his hands moved. Humans had always seemed strange and unpredictable to her people, but Rian felt steady, patient, and warm. Can I help? Lyra asked carefully. Rian blinked in surprise. You want to? God, I want to learn, she said softly. A gentle smile spread across his face. Of course, come here. Lyra knelt beside him. Rian guided her hand carefully, showing her how to connect two small wires. At first, she hesitated, afraid she would break something. But Rian's calm voice helped her relax. There, perfect, he said warmly. Lyra felt a spark of pride. She couldn't remember the last time she felt proud of anything she did. As the hours passed, Lyra began exploring the room slowly. She touched the smooth surface of the table, pressed her hand against the cool window, and observed the stars outside. Every tiny thing seemed filled with meaning, because she was experiencing it by choice, not command. Rian watched her quietly without interrupting her exploration. He wanted her to rediscover the world at her own pace. At one point, Lyra stood in front of the window for a long time. She pressed her hand lightly to the glass and whispered, "It feels different." What feels different? Rian asked gently. The stars, she said. They don't feel far anymore. They feel like they are waiting. Rian stepped beside her but kept a respectful distance. Waiting for what? She turned her silver eyes toward him. For me to start again. Rian's heart softened at her words. She was trying so hard to rebuild herself, even though she still struggled with fear. He admired her strength more than he could express. Around midday, Mara visited to check on Lyra. When she saw Lyra sitting comfortably and smiling faintly, her reptilian eyes softened. You look better, Mara said kindly. Lyra bowed her head. Thank you for helping me. Mara shook her head gently. You helped yourself. You spoke up. You chose freedom. Lyra looked down at her hands. I was afraid. Fear doesn't make you weak, Mara replied. It makes your courage more real. Rian watched the exchange, quietly proud of Lyra's progress. Mara handed him a pad with Lyra's official documents, proof she was recognized as an independent Solari citizen. This is for you, Mara said, turning to Lyra. Your name, your status, everything is here. No one can take you again. Lyra touched the pad like it was something fragile. Her fingers shook slightly. Her name, Lyra Salat, was written clearly across the top. Seeing her name printed without any title of ownership felt overwhelming. She pressed the pad to her chest and breathed slowly. Thank you, she whispered. After Mara left, Lyra walked back to the window, holding the pad tightly. Rian approached her gently. How do you feel? He asked. I feel. Lyra searched for words. Like, I am waking up. That's a good thing, Rian replied. Lyra turned toward him fully, her expression soft yet deeply sincere. Rian, may I ask something? Of course. Why do you care for me so much? Rian paused, unsure how to answer such a delicate question. He wasn't someone who made grand speeches. But he looked into her eyes, those careful, hopeful eyes, and spoke honestly. Because I saw someone who deserved better, he said. And because I want to see you live the life you choose. Lyra's lips parted slightly, touched by his honesty. She had spent so long in a world where people used her without asking what she wanted. To have someone care not because of what she was, but because of who she was, it felt like a kind of miracle. She whispered softly, "You are very different from others." "I'm just trying to do the right thing," Rian replied with a gentle smile. As the evening lights began to dim, Lyra and Rian stepped into the hallway. Rian wanted to show her more of the station so she could become familiar with it. Lyra walked close to him, not out of fear, but because she liked the safety of his presence. They moved through the quiet corridors. Lyra looked at shops, small gardens, and resting areas with childlike curiosity. Every new place felt like another version of freedom. Rian explained things to her, answered her questions, and never hurried her. At one point, they stopped at an observation deck overlooking the deep expanse of space. Lyra pressed her hands against the rail and stared in awe at the swirling colors of a nearby nebula. Her silver eyes sparkled in the soft light. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It is," Rian agreed, "just like you finally seeing it for yourself." Lyra looked at him, her cheeks warming slightly, though she couldn't explain the feeling. She remained silent for a while, taking in the view and letting her heart settle. When they returned to Rian's quarters, the room felt even warmer than before. Lyra sat near the window again, and Rian sat at the table, organizing his tools. For a long moment, neither spoke, but the silence felt peaceful, not empty. Then Lyra stood and walked toward him. She paused only a step away, her hands clasped together nervously. "Rian," she said quietly. He looked up, sensing something different in her voice. "Yes?" She hesitated, searching for courage in her heart. She had been owned, controlled, and silenced for so long that speaking her true feelings felt like stepping into unknown space. But she remembered how he stood by her, how he believed in her, how he protected her without expecting anything in return. She breathed softly, her voice like a fragile promise. "Take me home." Rian blinked, surprised by the emotion in her words. "Home?" he asked gently. "Where is home for you now?" Lyra touched her chest lightly, then placed her hand over his. "Where you are." Rian felt a warmth fill his chest, deeper than anything he expected. He covered her hand with his, steady and reassuring. "Then you're already home," he said softly. Lyra's eyes softened, shining with peace she hadn't felt in years. She stepped a little closer, her heart finally free. From that day onward, Lyra walked into her new life, beside the human who saw her not as a possession, not as a symbol, but as someone worth saving and someone worth caring for. And as the stars watched quietly from beyond the glass window, she knew she had found a place where she could finally heal. A place where she belonged. A place she chose. A place called home.